And so a key of the reform efforts that we are working through in the district is this opportunity for choice. In our high schools, instead of having one size fits most somehow, we can now start focusing on skills and interests of our students, and that every campus that's in a neighborhood can have 2 or 3 or even 4 different opportunities, small communities focused on themes and experiences that kids and families know meet their interests and their learning styles and their behaviors best. And in our K-8 facilities, we can not only have the traditional neighborhood school that looks very much like what we went to school with, but we can also have those for the artists and those who learn through touching things in sciences and technology and engineering and math. And we can look at how do we take advantage of some amazing community resources. How do we take advantage of this campus with Marion Sterling School sitting right around the corner? How do we take advantage of the Stokes Social Services Mall with East Technical Campus right around the corner? And how do we do it in a way that empowers that invitation to come into your school because it's part of your neighborhood? None of that is going to happen, though, if we continue to operate with the 1970s bureaucracies that ran schools very efficiently. That was their design, and they did it very well. You know, there's a toxic nostalgia that somehow urban schools in the 70s and the 80s were these fabulous, high-achieving places. And when you actually look back at the data, that's not even close to true. Our schools have had students who have been dropping out of schools in 50, 60, 70% dropout for decades. But at that time, you dropped out because you went and got a job and bought a house and married your partner and had a great life. And that doesn't work anymore. And so the system that supports that work needs to change very dramatically as well. And so behind the scenes, a little bit less publicly, we have launched a complete redesign of the personnel that support our schools and the function and the purpose of those personnel. It started with the CEO's chiefs, of which I am one. I'm fortunate and I'm pleased to have been rehired, but it was not a guarantee. Dr. Sanders put every one of us on notice and said we need a team that can do this new work. And you will bring your resume and you will sit before me and you will argue why you can. And we've been in that same process with my own team. As the academic officer, I need a team that is about action. I need a team that gets into our schools and says, what is it that you need to make sure that your academic plan works? And that stretches into our community. If students aren't coming to school, then we need to talk about what are the things that we can do to help families want to make sure their children are at school. And so I'll give you a before transformation kind of thinking of it and an after. In the past, many well-meaning people in schools, and you maybe have experienced this yourself, if your kindergarten or first grade student got perfect attendance, then that kindergarten or first grade student got the pen with the magic eraser on it. Thank you for coming to school every day. But when we ask ourselves why the kindergarten or first grade student was not in school, it likely had very little to do with this young person. It likely had more to do with the mom or dad that wasn't able or didn't have the opportunity to get that child to school. And so if we start thinking about ourselves as a resource to our community, and we start maybe not giving the pen with the magic eraser, but the equally cheap certificate that says, thank you for coming to school and making sure your child gets here every day, voila, you get impact on attendance. And we've seen those kinds of early, simple indicators of how to change school cultures and invite people into our schools by looking at how do we change the service and talk to schools about what is the problem, what is the root of that problem, and how do we address it. It also means removing barriers. Large systems, not even urban systems, are designed for efficiencies. There's one right way. And anyone who lives in Cleveland or knows our neighborhoods knows that every one of them has its unique culture and its unique personality. And no one right way is going to satisfy each of those. Now, there have to be rules, but those rules should be guideposts, philosophy of what's good for children, and then with the flexibility to solve the problems. So the other thing we're creating from a central perspective is not only this team coach that coaches our schools on the kinds of goals that they want to achieve and how best to get there, and how to use the resources of the district, but also barrier breakers to get barriers out of the way. The principal that you heard described today could not have done the work she was doing with her partners in the community if she spent all of her time filling out paperwork, chasing down lost order forms, trying to get the elevator to work for the 5th time so that the child who needs it to get to the 2nd floor can do so. And so we as a system have got to be able to demonstrate the capacity and the commitment to make sure that our actions are always student-focused, both on helping students improve and also by removing the barriers that keep our students and our faculty and our leaders and then ultimately our community from engaging well with our kids. And so we're in the midst of a really rigorous evaluation, not only of how do we support every single school, which you've probably heard a lot about. You've heard a lot about school closings, but amidst that, you've probably heard our efforts to grow some schools with additional flexibility, to refocus others where certain specific supports will make a huge difference instead of providing the same support to every school in a tiny, thin layer that makes virtually no difference at all. And finally, our repurposing of schools, where we take some schools that have failed to meet the expectations of our community on a number of factors for a number of years, and actually inventing new opportunities for new neighborhoods to invent the kinds of schools that meet their particular needs. So again, I'll close with what I opened with, that what a pleasure it is to be on the stage with such an esteemed colleague and the work that has been done in a single school. Because I would argue that this single school work can be brought to scale, but it needs to be brought to scale in the very chicken and egg fashion that maybe I discussed at the beginning, because we're doing it at the grassroots, and because we're insisting upon it from those leadership and policy perspectives. And so with that, I know our time is short, so I know I will also have opportunity to engage in questions, but thank you for giving me this brief opportunity to join you today. And thank you also for spending some time with Dr. Edelberg and seeing what's going on, really exciting in Chicago, and how that can be something that we're doing in every single school in Cleveland. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Foster, Director of the City Club, and pleased to welcome you to the City Club of the City Forum in partnership with Tri-C and Key Bank. One of the most enjoyable lunches I've had was a little more than 3 years ago when I received an invitation to dine with the then new president of Tri-C, Dr. Michael Scope. We had lunch in his office, and it was catered by students who were part of the Tri-C culinary program. I'm, to this day, not sure whether the lunch or the conversation was more enjoyable, but both were memorable. Thank you, Michael. I've been back here a few times since then, and it's certainly very nice to be back today. Today at Cuyahoga Community College, we are listening to a City Club special forum featuring Jacqueline Edelberg, author, How to Walk to School, Blueprint for a Neighborhood Renaissance, and Eric Gordon, Chief Academic Officer of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. And now we would like to return to our speakers for our traditional City Club question and answer period. Dr. Scope, I think you're going to come up here and moderate the question and answer period. If you have a question, we will get microphones to you. Carrie Miller up there has the microphone, so please raise your hand and let Carrie know that you have a question.
Okay, my first question is to regards to No Child Left Behind. I know that was an emphasis being put on No Child Left Behind, on as far as kids making sure they meet the minimum scores, tests, what have you. Now you've given a model of the school of a twist as far as arts, and by exposing kids to arts, dance, regular art, and music. How can you tell why it's important to have these programs to go along with, even though as far as emphasis on kids meeting their academic standards as well?
You're the educator. Okay. I guess I would offer from the academic research, we know the importance of a well-rounded education and its impact on reading and math. So first, for educators, I would remind us that we know very specifically that kids who move in physical activity, that kids who perform in the arts, whether it be performance arts or visual arts, often outperform their peers who only focus on reading and math. I think the other thing, though, that I would remind us as a community is what we already know. And we know what a well-rounded, rich education is.